Today we have two readings, one from a book entitled Buddhism is Not What You Think, Finding Freedom Beyond Beliefs by Steve Hagen, as from a chapter entitled Canyons in a Cup. Zen practice is about being awake, being aware. But if the point is to be awake, what do we do about it? How do we wake up? And what does it mean to be awake? Aren't we awake now? Huang Po, a Chinese Zen master of the 7th century, said, "If you students of the way do not awake to this mind, you will overlay mind with conceptual thought. You will seek Buddha outside yourselves, and you will remain attached to forms, pious practices, and so on, all of which are harmful and not at all the way to supreme knowledge." This is precisely what we do. We overlay our direct experience of reality with our ideas of what is real. And because our ability to do this is so subtle and so highly developed, we don't even know that we're doing it. Thus we become chronically confused. Take any object, a mountain, the sky, or an everyday object like a teacup. Our usual way is to think it's just a cup. Often we know the object so well and we size it up so quickly that we ignore it almost entirely. We make ourselves a pot of tea and blindly fill the cup with no thought and barely any awareness of what we're actually doing. We do this because we know, we believe it's just a cup and nothing more. But if we really pay attention to what's actually experienced, it's not just a cup. If we look, we can see the whole universe right here as the cup. Inside the cup, as the Sufi poet Kabir would say, are canyons and pine mountains. Find those in your coffee cup. And a reading from Joseph Goldstein from a talk he gave on concepts and reality. One way of understanding this concept of self, later tonight go outside and look up at the sky, and if you're familiar with the constellations at all, you will see the Big Dipper, a nice big collection of stars. This is mid-retreat exam now. I'm going to ask you a question. Is there really a Big Dipper? There is not. There is no Big Dipper. There are some points of lights which we call stars, and what we have done, we have separated out one particular group of points of light, and we have put a concept on it. Big Dipper. What is very interesting experience to do is to go outside, look up at the sky, and see if it's possible not to see the Big Dipper. It's very difficult. When you have become so conditioned to see patterns in a certain way, to have these concepts so strong in our minds, it's very difficult to simplify our perception to see just what is there. In exactly the same way that the Big Dipper is a concept, the idea of the self, the idea of I, is also a concept. What we are is a constellation of changing elements of mind and body, and then we put this idea of self on it. A teaching that Jack Kornfield mentioned the other night speaks very directly to this understanding. He said, "We live in illusion and the appearance of things. There is a reality. We are that reality. When we understand this, we see we are nothing, and being nothing, we are everything. That is all. We live in the illusion and appearance of things. We live in a world of concepts, our own mental constructs. There is a reality. We are that reality. When we understand this, we see we are nothing. Being nothing, we're everything." That's what our practice is about, coming out of the illusion and beginning to touch what is actually true. We've been talking recently about some of the interesting qualities, skills, tools that the mind has that when applied in certain ways are extremely useful and very powerful, but they can cause a tremendous amount of confusion and suffering as well. And one of these things that we talked about was how our basic experience, we're just embedded in life. Basically, life is just being itself through us. Our heart beats, our lungs breathe, we feel hungry and we eat, we feel tired and we sleep. It's just life being life without any difficulty at all. But the mind can do something. When we experience something that's a frustration or a discomfort, it creates something artificial, a separation. There's a thing there that's causing a problem for me over here. And this me over here starts thinking and making plans and ideas of how to do something to that thing over there that's causing the problem, either maybe grasping something or using some kind of aggression or whatever the strategy is, until that thing over there is no longer a problem. Great tool, very useful. If I'm wandering around and I'm hungry, I wandered towards maybe the corn chips or something like that, and I try to open the package. Well, I don't have any success opening the package, so my mind does this wonderful split. Here's this thing over here, this unopened package that is thwarting me over here who wants to eat what's in the package, and I start thinking and making a plan. Let me see, I'll either get scissors, or if I can't find those, maybe a hatchet or something that's going to open this bag now. And I will find a way, usually, to open the bag and go on with my experience. Great tool for certain kinds of situations. But when the mind does this with certain things like, why am I not happy? What are you going to do? Where's the set of scissors that is going to open that up? There isn't one. Or why don't people like me more? Or how could I be a better person? All sorts of things dealing with our well-being, our happiness, our freedom and joy that can't be put into this separation of a thing over here causing a problem to me over here. It just doesn't work. That happiness, the joy, the freedom is only experienced when we're just being life embedded in life. So when we create it as a problem and try to solve a problem with thinking, we have a lot of problems with that. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about what the mind is doing and about how it relates to this thing we call awakening, which if we've read any kind of spiritual literature at all, this is something that, like, wow, this is the real magic stuff that's going to happen. The awakened person, the enlightened. When do I get superpowers? This will be really great. Read people's minds and levitate and all that magical stuff. But awakening turns out to be something really very, very simple and very direct. It's being able to tell the difference between reality and concept. We have a direct experience, and it's always right here. Reality is always presenting itself just perfectly, and yet what the mind can do, which can be skillful, useful in certain circumstances, is it overlays concepts on top of that direct experience. And those concepts can mask our ability to connect with, to feel, to experience that direct reality as it is. And in fact, it will start, before this class is over, it will start trying to figure out a concept of what this reality is that we're supposed to look at beyond our concepts. So it's doing this, and we are confused because it's hard to see that we're doing it. It's so subtle, it's so pervasive, it's so well trained, we don't notice it. And his example is really, really good. It's going out and looking at the Big Dipper. Is there anybody here who hasn't seen the Big Dipper? Of course not. We can find it, if it's in the sky, it's like, there it is. And it would be hard not to see the Big Dipper, but if we just pause for a moment, is there an actual dipper there? No. There's a number of points of light, and by agreement, the people who see that pattern, we call that the Big Dipper. But there's not one. That's a concept that we put over on top of it. And yet it's so well ingrained, it's hard not to see those pop out and ignore the rest. And this is exactly what the mind does with all of its conceptual overlays. There's certainly certain points of experience that it puts together, attaches them inside a concept, and then we take that concept to be what's there. We think we're actually seeing it. So I notice something here, and I said, oh, this is me. It's I, Larry, here I am. And without looking a little bit deeper, I'm not seeing that there's not one of those. Not like that anyway. I've got sensations, feelings of temperature. I've got feelings of pressure where I'm sitting. There's sensations as I'm breathing. There's some thoughts going on in the head. There's visual information coming in. I'm hearing sounds. All sorts of stuff is going together. And out of all of that, just like looking up at the stars, lots of points of light, the mind puts on a concept and says, what all this stuff is that's going on right now, that's me. And when we do that, it sort of freezes things. I don't get to see that it's changing all the time. I don't get to see that it's interdependent, interrelated with everything else. That there isn't any way to separate out a Larry any more than there's a way to cut out the Big Dipper and move it somewhere else. Because it's not. That's not the way our life experience really is. And our problem is that the mind has gotten so accustomed to using these conceptual structures that it looks for things and tries to make concepts of stuff that it just doesn't work with. And thus we experience a lot of suffering. We can make a concept about happiness or peace or well-being or fulfillment. We can write books about them. I probably have half of them somewhere in a stack. But those are direct experiences that you can't have in a concept. Any concepts or words I have about happiness or peace or joy, those words don't have anything to do with the direct experience. Any more than a book written about strawberries will give you a taste of strawberries. There's something that has to make a leap there. It's not about, well, I just haven't read enough books about strawberries yet. It's like, no, you need to pick one up and chew on it. Taste it directly. And it's like, wow, that is so different than any of the papers that I've ever read about strawberries. And that's what our practice is about, is seeing clearly the difference between those two things. So we've got two tasks to do in our practice. One is to understand more what the mind is doing, to be able to recognize that we are putting concepts out there, that I'm not seeing actual separate people, that those are conceptual patterns that I'm putting out there, to see how the mind is working, and understanding that is a big part, and then get more familiar with direct experience, the stuff that's always going on. And this is our practice of mindfulness, just being present. So we practice noticing the breath. And as we do this, at some point, we're not making any concept of saying, oh, this is meditation. All right, this is an in-breath, this is an out-breath. It's just life breathing life. And for a moment, our concepts subside, and we're just present. And then we're all thinking about it, like, oh, I could go buy a book about this and read about more mindfulness stuff. But then it's like, no, that's one of those leaves flowing by. I can come back to what this direct experience is now. And we discover that as we do this, we're not getting rid of concepts. We're seeing through them, and we're able to touch something that's very, very precious, which is our capacity to experience joy and freedom. And we begin to see this not only in ourselves, but in others as well, because we can begin to look through the concepts we have put on top of other people, situations, different things in our environment, and see, no, there's something that's alive here that never, ever can truly be embraced by a concept. And that's the freedom and peace that we've always sought for. Although the freedom and peace words are just concepts. Thoughts, questions, ideas, concepts?
I'm so impressed that I could sit for 20 minutes without moving. I could not.
You did it.
I did.
Right. So we have a mind story, which is one of those things the mind does. Says, "Oh, we can't do that. We've got to, keep moving, doing something," because it's always going to try to be engaged in more and more stuff. This keeps it perpetuated. And it's only times when we do this, or maybe sometimes there's natural ways we experience it. It might be a walk in the park, or spending time with a young child or a puppy dog or something, when it's like, whoa, the mind stuff has stopped and I didn't die. I'm not only here, I'm way here. So here that I'm nothing at all and everything at the same time. So when do you notice a difference between concept and reality?
So I like the way you described it previously about thinking about it as using a different map. So I guess in some situations it's good to use concepts.
Yes. One of the most wonderful things that's invented as part of our evolution, the ability to use concepts. To be able to lump lots of different patterns together and be able to operate on all of them. So last week we talked about how our mind's creation of the concept of a past and a future can be incredibly useful. And we get to start making plans and setting goals and learn things from way different patterns associated. But the problem there is that when we try to find happiness in a past or a future, we'll be tremendously frustrated. Because that can't be there. It's only in present moment experience. It's free from that.
Maybe the pattern can help us to find happiness in the present moment and situation. A pattern?
A pattern?
Yeah.
Okay. So we find things where it can be somewhat useful depending on how we take it. So I think, well, I've been very distracted and unhappy. Maybe if I went to the beach, I would feel happier. And it could work. I go to the beach and
I was thinking maybe in the past, I always love to be on the beach. For me, the sea is very important.
Uh-huh.
So maybe if I can replicate the same pattern, I can,
right.
knowing that it is a pattern, it's just a concept.
Right. We've got a two-edged thing going on there. One is that it might actually persuade you to get in your car and drive toward a beach somewhere and enjoy that. The other thing that's problematic is something that's saying that my happiness can't be here now. It's only there somewhere else in an imaginary future. And so I'll be miserable here until I get to the beach. There, the concept becomes problematic and creating suffering rather than pointing us in a direction.
I am laughing because I always remember your sentence about finding beauty in the around finding beauty in the wrinkles of the sidewalk.
Sure.
In McDonald's, around
Right.
McDonald's. So.
When we practice this skill of mindfulness, being in the present moment, we discover that whole world opens. And that things that our mind, our conceptual structure thought couldn't be right here, are manifestly, beautifully present. Beauty and joy and peace and, awesome presence. It's here. And I still might want to go to the beach. But not because I think that the beach has something that couldn't be here. Then going to the beach becomes a way that life being life in me expresses itself. Kind of like a dance. Hey, it's wonderful here. I think I'll carry this wonderfulness off to the beach.
Yeah.
Because, with the other map that the happiness is going to be in the future, then we're going to be, what the mind does is it does that little carrot on a stick trick. It'll be, well, I'll be happy when I get to my vacation. Well, this one, I'll be happy when I can take a vacation in France. Well, no, now I'll be happy when I can make enough money to buy an island somewhere that I can go and live. And that, there's always something more that we never quite get there when we just follow the mind map.
I understand it. I was not thinking about the future. I was thinking that given some conditions, given specific pattern, maybe I can express myself or completely or
right.
something like that. I was not thinking about the future.
Yeah, this is not a teaching that says all experiences are exactly the same, like some kind of cosmic pea soup. When we're vividly present, then we become actually more clear about what is joyful in the present moment. I love the taste of asparagus. I'm not so fond of Brussels sprouts. So rather than a concept, it's a vivid connection with that. You vividly connect with being on the beach. And there can be discomfort, certainly in the present moment. And I clearly notice that if I eat the whole bag of corn chips that my mind was looking for, that I don't feel as comfortable as I'd like. So I learned something from that. And we learn something more clearly when we're present, connected with reality as it's presenting ourselves rather than a concept about it. I remember once I went on a little weekend vacation thing to Arkansas, go camping out there. And somewhere down the road, there were a group of young folks who were also camping, but they had brought everything from home. All of their food, jam boxes and music, alcohol, loud noise, everything. So it was like they had just brought their experience from where they were to this new place. And they might have been having fun, I think they were, but I'm thinking also that they might have been missing something that was being offered there because they had an overlay of all the stuff they already had.
I am always impressed by this big RV, this big recreational vehicle.
Oh,
So you travel with your house. It's like traveling with your house, you know what I mean?
Okay. I'm saying wherever you go, there you are.
It is a form of protection, probably.
And the mind gets a little nervous if it thinks, well, what am I going to do without all my stuff? Like, could I survive sitting for 20 minutes without my usual patterns of doing things? What's going to happen?
So do you develop a habit of disconnecting from your experiences in order to be happy? Is that what you're insinuating?
In a way, what we're wanting to do is reconnect directly with our experience to be happy, to be able to feel our senses, this moment as it is, and that the conceptual clouds that we often put in front of us actually mask our opportunities to be happy. So we want more happiness. We find that by practicing mindfulness and presence. And discovering, hey, it's here.
Would it be like comparing us to a child?
Childlike awareness?
Yeah.
Yes.
To just be happy without
Yeah.
any...
A child doesn't have that overlay of concepts there. Another teacher, Zen master, said, we want to keep beginner's mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's that fresh, first moment. If you walk out in a forest with beginner's mind, you're seeing everything fresh and new. If you have, a dozen years being trained as a botanist and you go out, what you see are labels for different trees and plants, maybe. And it's more difficult to move beyond them. Certainly not impossible. But we want to keep beginner's mind, childlike mind. Become as a little child if you want to have the direct experience of heaven.
But this this sounds a little bit incompatible with regular life. I mean, we need a pattern to feel grounded and to feel safer among all the risk, the
Pattern,
dangers
yeah.
around us.
Sure.
This is the misunderstanding, probably.
Yeah.
You feel all just the child could be really happy because all this layer that we are accumulated during our life. We works very hard to get those, and then you realize in a moment, I don't need this, but how may I remove all of this? But at the same time, I think we need it. What is that?
Yes.
This situation among the inner child that we have to recover, and what about the adult to have to handle that experience without being a burden?
Good point. We need to have some kind of a balance of how these can work together in a way that does not create suffering. So all of the patterns, all of the abilities that our mind have, we're not trying to nuke those. Because we have someone without any conceptual skills just go wandering out, oh, beautiful flowers, trees, oh, I wonder what that is. Oh, they call it a truck. We need to have concepts, patterns, protections, boundaries, and all of that. But what, with our practice we have, is something that's making us more clear about what's what, not confusing one thing for another, not confusing thinking that a concept can give us something that it can't, or that we don't need the concept for anything. So we're having a situation in which, in a way, they become much more transparent. So that we can have that direct experience and the benefit of all of our understanding and planning and goal setting and everything else.
One of the things I've experienced recently is I'm a lap swimmer, and
I didn't hear that.
a lap swimmer, and I've been used to swimming for the last 2 years in a pool that's 85 degrees. Well, the last week I've been swimming in a pool that's 80 degrees. And when I first got in the 80-degree pool, I thought, man, I can't do this. So the concept was, I have to swim in 85-degree water to be comfortable. And so I made myself really miserable the first swim. The second swim I got in, but yet when I was after I finished the swim in the cold weather, I noticed there was less pain in my hip because of less inflammation. So I'm sort of thinking that, maybe these concepts that I carry in my mind about a certain situation unfolding in a certain way, maybe I need to put that on the shelf and just get into the new situation. And there's a certain level of discomfort, but I don't need to make it as uncomfortable as it is as I'm going back to my previous situation and wishing for the 85 degrees. So what you said today is causing me to kind of look at my life and see how I do that, how the concepts that I carry with me really do control the way I respond to a situation, when it's maybe not the situation completely that's the issue.
Yeah, that's a great example of that, because we have something where the mind says, this is the right temperature, this is the right way, it needs to fit in this. And when it at first didn't, you were experiencing this is miserable, because that's what the map said. Anything off the edges of this little map, that's got to be misery. And then you went beyond the concept. So what is it that I'm actually sensing and experiencing here? And some new world, new possibility things opened up. There's something outside of the concept which might be useful in certain situations, but there's something else here that wasn't on my previous conceptual map. And that's a degree of freedom.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
Yeah. So what we're wanting is freedom. So the thoughts that we have are useful, but not our masters, and keeping certain possibilities of life experience shut down.
Thank you. That's a really good point.
I like the thoughts that will keep me driving on the road on the right side and stopping at the little red lights and things like that. Very useful concept. I want that one in place. But I don't want it to take over and say, well, you can't drive outside the city limits or something.
Security or control.
We
I
do.
say every day I'm going to leave, for work at such and such time, and there's going to be no traffic or so much traffic, and then if something goes awry, we get upset. So I think if you think about, I really don't have any control, and go with it like, hey, I wonder what's going to happen today. And I've tried that a few times, and it's been easier when something unexpected happens.
Yeah, I think that our conceptual maps are pretty much about control. Which is actually impossible to get working. Jack Kornfield had another little paragraph here that I like, that it addresses that. And the Buddha spoke of how it cannot even be said that we own this mind and body. If you owned it, you would be able to say, okay, thoughts, no more today. And if you owned it, you could do that. And if you owned the body, you could say, okay, no pain during sitting meditation. One of the meanings of selflessness is that things are ungovernable. They do not happen according to our wish. They happen according to the laws which govern the process. So when conditions are there for the pain to be present, the pain will be present. When the conditions are there for it to be gone, it will be gone. The body gets older, it gets sick, it dies. We have no control over it. This idea of ownership, of possessiveness, is just an idea, and it has its uses. Like all these concepts of image and time and ownership, They serve a purpose in our conventional reality. So I'm not suggesting we throw them out. I'm suggesting that we see them for what they are so they do not burden our lives and they do not mask the deeper truth. So what we want with any of these teachings is a kind of little red light. It's like when we experience suffering, that's when we want to start looking at concepts. If I'm having concepts about corn chips and where to drive and what I'm supposed to do and who I'm supposed to call tomorrow and all of that, and I'm not suffering, there's no problem there. Really, that's just life being embedded as life, and it's doing some thinking stuff, which it does in human beings. When I experience suffering is when I want to look at the process and see, perhaps are my conceptual overlays, the stories I'm telling, the maps I'm using, not working with how it actually is. If you're not suffering, have fun. Imagine you're whoever you think you are.
When you get to this point, how do you deal with people who think they are in control or who want to be in control of the world?
That's a good question.
Because I tend to crash.
I like to get out of their way.
Sometimes you can.
Sometimes you can't, that's right. And what other people do and think is one of those things that I'm not in control of.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So, what I find practically in that situation is that person here is doing whatever they're doing, which my mind is going to label being a turkey of some sort, and I'm having this strong reaction. I'm frustrated, I'm angry. Rather than trying to change that external person situation, I can look at my beliefs about that person. The story that I'm telling, the conceptual map that I have. And I'll see that a lot of my discomfort, my suffering, is not coming from the person, but from the map that I'm using to describe them.
Generally, it goes the opposite way. They are mad at me.
Oh, okay.
Because they think you can control things.
No, well, then I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
This is where we become, a little bit compassionate, because we see that so much of this suffering that we see around us is self-created. And that allows us to be kinder and less judgmental with people. It's like they're this close to joy and peace, and their mind is making an experience of hell. As Milton said, the mind is its own place and can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And I certainly see that in myself and people around me all the time. All I have to do is not get my way. And that could knock out a whole day. I'll show them I won't be happy at all.
Or a couple of years.
Or, yeah, it depends, right?
Kids can demand something and then give up right away.
Yeah, they don't hold on long.
They just cry. 5 minutes later, they're okay.
Yeah. So it brings, how this practice actually becomes embedded in us is that, before we start practice, we could get lost for years in some of these mind stories and not even know they're there. But then as we begin to practice, okay, I got stuck in that one for 2.5 months and got out of it. And then, well, a week and I'm getting tired of it. I think I'll let go of it. Then a day, and then I spent a whole hour today on that. And then at some point it's like, oh, no, I'm not going to take that invitation. Been there, done that. That's just a concept. It's like the little leaf. Rather than getting stuck with the leaf floating by for 2 years, it's 2 months, 2 days, 2 hours, 2 seconds. It's just like, nah. All right, so now we have some wonderful concepts about direct experience.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Go for my next session.